Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 29. Can you believe it? Episode 29 of Teh Tarik with Walid. So, tonight we will have the Assistant Director-General of NTUC, the National Trades Union Congress, who is Mr. Zainal Sapari. He was a former PAP Member of Parliament, a two-term Member of Parliament, and I will get to him in a while, but I only intend to have one more episode for the year. Hopefully one more. I haven't decided on who, or I haven't extended the invitation to anyone specifically for episode 30. I have extended many invitations to different people and have gotten some rejections, some ghosting as well. But okay, par for the course. So if you have any idea of anyone who may be interested to come on, do tell me, and then we can have episode 30 with them. But today we will have a discussion with Mr. Zainal Sapari on income inequality. And Mr. Zainal Sapari, he has been one of the, and honestly he is one of my favorite MPs, or was one of my favorite MPs. He has been one of the most prominent, most active champions, he still is, of the lower income, especially lower wage workers. And I think it is somewhat a waste that he's not in Parliament anymore, but his work continues outside Parliament as well through NTUC, and he was also heavily involved in the progressive wage model idea, to the point of its execution until now, still involved in refining it. So we will have a discussion on that. Hopefully we won't deviate too much from our topic, but I cannot guarantee. Feel free to type in your questions, whatever questions you have for Mr. Zainal, and hopefully we will have a productive discussion. Hello, Mr. Zainal, how are you?
Yeah, hello, Dr. Walid. Yeah.
Please call me Walid.
Yeah.
No need for formalities.
No need for formality. All right. Okay. No problem, brother.
Okay.
In the union, we address each other as brothers. Yeah.
Mr. Zainal, I wanted to brother Zainal. Sorry.
Yeah.
Comrade Zainal, right? That's what the NTUC folks.
No more already. Comrade was a long time ago, but I think when then SecGen, Brother Lim Swee Say took over, he kind of changed the culture and encouraged us to call each other brothers and sisters. No more comrade.
No more comrade.
No more comrade already. Yeah.
Okay. So, Brother Zainal. Okay. So, I wanted to ask first, do you remember the first time we met?
Yes, I remembered. I think it was over an issue about Malay Muslims being in the armed forces, I think. Yeah. Over at the mosque. I cannot remember what is the name of the mosque. Yeah. Masjid Temenggung. Masjid Temenggung. Masjid Hang Jebat. Yes, Masjid Hang Jebat. Okay.
So this was probably 10 years ago, right? Probably 2011, right?
Yeah, definitely 2011. Yeah.
2011, yeah. So I remember I sent an email to the Malay MPs, and I think you were tasked to put me in place, right? So that's why.
I actually I wasn't asked to see you or anything.
Right. I know it was a personal thing.
Yeah. I decided. I decided to engage you on the issue. Yeah.
Right,
and I didn't know you were actually. Then I think you were doing your masters, right? In NUS.
Yeah. Oh, you still remember? Okay. So Mr. Zainal and I, since then, we have had a pretty good relationship. And he even attended my dad's funeral, and he's always happy to share his thoughts and wisdom. Also, we have our fair share of disagreements as well.
Yeah. We agree to disagree. We must agree to disagree.
It's all in good spirit, right? Right. So let's start with. I'm sure people have questions on the National Day rally and so on, and I think even the national. Let's start off with that, right? Because you have been a champion of the lower wage workers, the low income more broadly,
yes.
right? So, what just happened during the National Day rally? Did we just get a minimum wage without using the term minimum wage?
I think what was announced was a scheme by which we want to level up the salary of the lower income workers. I wouldn't call it a minimum wage because it has some similarities with minimum wage, but it is not intended as a national minimum wage policy. If you have a national minimum wage policy, then it must be applicable to all workers. So when we adopted this progressive wage approach, I think it is more targeted. So what PM announced was basically three approach. The first approach is for us to have the sectoral progressive wage model, which is actually my forte. We have currently the four mandatory sectors: cleaning, security, landscape, lift and escalator. We will be expanding into more sectors. We are looking into having a progressive wage model for waste management, retail, as well as food services. So that would be the sectoral progressive wage model. The other approach that we are taking would be the occupational progressive wages. Occupational progressive wages, we are targeting certain occupation. Currently, we are looking at drivers and administrators. So for this occupational progressive wage, it will cut across all industries. It is a challenge because if you look at the driver, a driver in logistics sector might be different from a driver in some other industry, some other sectors. Then after the occupational progressive wage, the other one that we are using will actually be again an administrative lever, what we call the local qualifying salary. Local qualifying salary is a salary that you must pay your workers in order for you to be entitled to foreign workers. So it's not really minimum wage, some element of it in the sense that this is the salary that you need to pay your workers before you can get foreign workers. Yep.
So is it fair to say it's minimum wage for Singaporeans in companies which want to employ foreign workers? Essentially, that's it, right?
Okay, I think you can see it that way. It will be very targeted, very specific. Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So then what happened to previous arguments about minimum wage, why it's not feasible, about it's a market distortion, and about how employers would not employ people. So what happened to all those arguments? I mean, all those arguments, were they not sound economically, or what changed such that those arguments are no longer valid?
Okay, I think I must state upfront, whatever I express now is my own personal views, not representative of the government, not representative of my organization. But I think when it comes to helping uplift the wages of the lower wage workers, I remember the stand that that was shared by my anchor minister as NTUC head. I think we have nothing philosophical against minimum wage. What we want is to try to find the best approach where we can minimize the downside of minimum wage and maximize the upside of minimum wage. So what is the downside of minimum wage is what you just shared. Sometimes a minimum wage can lead to a maximum wage where employers might not be willing to pay more than what has been stated. Minimum wage can lead to wage stagnation, what we call sticky wages. But in order for us to maximize the upsides, we do state the salary that the workers can earn, but we tie this up to certain skills that they need to possess, they need to demonstrate. Skills which we think will lead to higher chance of them improving their productivity, skills which we think will allow them to assume position of higher responsibility. That is what we call by maximizing the upside. But I have to admit, when we were looking at setting wages for drivers, setting wages for administrative assistant, we have not reached a landing point. But the concern that was raised about minimum wage were also concerned during those discussions. So we just have to find a common landing point.
Right. So the same arguments, the same concerns are still there, basically, right? It's just that.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So you guys have made the calculation that the benefits outweigh those concerns.
I think nobody can know for sure what would be the final outcome. But we just have to make the best that we can to minimize any possible downside. So like, I think PM, if you recall, PM shared that when we want to implement some of these schemes, there will be transitional wage support that will be provided by the government. This is to make sure we minimize any possible downside on the part of the employers who might have factored in their operating costs based on the old salary of the workers, not based on what would be a new salary for the workers.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that. So I think I have some questions on the broader philosophies, right? But on the specifics first, right? So this particular policy is clearly for Singaporeans, right? So is the biggest thing that's stopping minimum wage from being implemented the presence of foreign workers? Is that the ultimate impediment?
I wouldn't say that would be the ultimate impediment, but I think the foreign worker will be one of the groups of workers that we do need to take into account if we do decide to have a minimum wage. So I give you, for example, right, when we set out the salary for the progressive wage, under the progressive wage model, we did specify that the principles of progressive wage should also be applicable to the foreign workers. So in a sense that when we look at wage, we do allow the employers to look at the total wage cost, not just the salary that is being paid to the workers to achieve some form of parity. We also want to make sure that when the workers are skilled, when the foreign workers are skillful, you do pay a salary that would reflect the skill set that the foreign workers possess. So there must be some parity.
How is that going in that front, on that front?
So far, I think we have implemented minimum wage for the past since the year 2014 when it came into effect, and I think the workers under work permit, they accept because at the end of the day they do receive what they think is fair salary to them, and our local workers receive what they deem would be a salary as stipulated under the progressive wage.
Do they accept because they think it's fair, or because they have no choice, essentially?
I cannot comment about that but I think when it comes to fairness, not necessarily the wages must be the same. By the end of the day, when these foreign workers come to Singapore, I kind of assume they did sign a contract with their employers, what would be the salary payable and what would be the working hours would be like.
Right. Okay. So thank you for that. So if I could push you a little on that, right? Because I'm looking at this, looking at the elections last year, when the dormitories was actually a huge issue, but it didn't really become an election issue, right? And I felt that was essentially an indictment of Singapore society, right? Because parties always, they shape the ground, but they also react to the ground, right? And the fact that foreign workers and their conditions were not an election issue, right, shows that probably Singaporeans that wasn't on the first thing or first priority on their list of priorities, right? So my point is it that we can just ignore foreign workers and their salaries or minimum wage, because there is no demand from Singaporeans? And when you talk about contracts, for instance, right, But if your conditions are marginally better than back home, you would accept it anyway, right? That doesn't mean that terms of the contract are fair or anything of that nature.
I think we should, I mean, from NTUC's point of view, every worker matters. To us, we must make sure that our friends who are foreign workers, they are also fairly treated and by the employers. That is the reason why on the part of NTUC, we actually set up the Migrant Worker Center. And the role of the Migrant Worker Center really is to look after the welfare of the foreign workers. And they have, over time, pushed for many things which eventually was put into practice. So I give you an example. We do have Employment Act, which is intended to protect our foreign workers. I think Migrant Worker Center, they are working very actively with some of these NGOs to make sure that the foreign workers are not abused and taken advantage of.
Okay. So there's a question from Koki. Do you know Mr. Zainal? Do you know Kokila? She's one of the most strident voices for migrant workers, and she is asking why can't migrant workers unionize that?
Actually, it is not true. Migrant workers can become union members. So in my union under building, construction and timber employees union, we do have among our members who are foreign workers. The percentage might not be very high. I think in terms of our total membership, we have maybe around 15 to 20% of our members who are actually foreign workers. So foreign workers, they can become union members. So if there is any workplace grievance that they have, the unions do assist them. But we do know that having to pay $9 per month might not be easy for these foreign workers. So the other layer that we have is to set up the Migrant Worker Center. The Migrant Worker Center is basically operates like an NGO. It is staffed by NTUC staff, but actually funded by the tripartite partners.
Okay, thank you. So just one final question on this, right? So do you have any broad comments about how our society, right, views migrant workers, and because any party during the election, all the major parties did not really bring up the issue of dormitories, right? Especially the opposition, you would think that that could be a potent electoral issue, but the fact that they didn't means that they didn't feel that it would be a potent electoral issue. Or am I off in my analysis, you think?
I think at the end of the day, on the part, whatever the political parties focus on is a decision that they have to make, or okay, whatever issue that they want to focus on. But I think on the part of NTUC, we stand by our philosophy that every worker matters. We will assist workers within what is within our area of influence. So I give you an example. When there was an outbreak of the COVID-19 in the dorms, MWC has been in the forefront, supporting the efforts to make sure that our migrant workers receive the attention, receive the help, receive the support needed. When it comes to foreign workers, we need to assess by what has been done. And I think at the current moment, there are many things that is being looked into. So I give you an example. One of the issue we had with migrant worker is over salary payment. And we have insisted that employers must pay the salary of the foreign workers through electronic bank gyro payment. MOM initially they were quite reluctant to make it mandatory, but subsequently we noticed because of COVID, there has been greater take up, because if salaries are paid electronically, then that would minimize a potential dispute over salary payment. So to your listener, Kopi Parva, Koki Parva, I again would encourage her to engage MWC over this matter, because this is really not my domain area. Yeah.
Okay. So you are adroitly steering away from making any overtly political statements. But I will try to bring you by the way, I think it's very good of me. Happy Teachers Day to you, because you were a teacher, you were an educator, you were my wife's discipline master.
Yes.
Yeah. So happy Teachers Day to you. So okay, so you have talked before about changing mindset, right? Changing mindset.
Yes.
And this is in regard to paying workers what they are due, right?
Yeah.
Right?
I think
Society must be willing. Yeah.
I think when I talk about changing mindset, that was more in the context of outsourced workers, because I wrote one blog where there was a phenomena where a lot of organizations, they want to focus on their core business. That includes the government. They want to focus on their core business. What they considered it as non-core, they prefer to buy those services. So for example, cleaning, in the past, even the school attendants, they will clean the school compound. But cleaning is not considered as the core business of school. So then what we did was that government decided to buy services. We engaged companies to provide the cleaning services. It was the same when we look at landscape. Instead of NParks doing all the landscape maintenance, they actually buy services where companies provide those landscape services. And how companies then buy these services is through the tender process. And through the tender process, they always give the contract to the lowest bidder. If you check in with them, it's always come to the issue where they are unwilling to pay. They might not be willing to pay for the quality, and it creates a vicious cycle. When you give to the lowest bidder, I think the one that suffers the most would actually be the workers working under that contract. So even when we look at the progressive wage model for the food services, right, one of the concerns that we have is really the possible impact on food prices. And I think PM did mention that we must be prepared. We must be prepared to pay more in order to make sure that the workers can be paid better salary. So that kind of mindset that I'm talking about.
Okay. I wanted to ask, where do these kinds of mindsets come from? Like cutting corners, going for the... Where does it come from?
I'm not sure, but it is a natural behavior perhaps that when you buy something, you want to buy at the lowest prices, but still expect to get the best deal out of it. Okay, it's just natural human behavior. But then what do we do then to mitigate, to make sure that the workers do not suffer? All right, that the workers do not get the lowest deal out of this. That was the reason why we came out with the progressive wage model, because the progressive wage model will create a level playing field. Companies, you can bid at the lowest, but at the end of the day, there is some form of protection in terms of what is payable to the workers in terms of their salary.
Right. Okay. So the reason I asked, right, because this is a government that doesn't leave things to chance, right? And this is a government that is always happy to take credit for changing mindsets on certain issues, for instance, right? So why is it that
So do you think it's fair for members of the government to say, oh, people must change mindset, especially if you say it's natural, which perhaps there is some element to it, right? But don't you think these mindsets also arise from somewhere? And that's the purpose of policies and institutions, right? To change mindset, right?
Yeah. So I will leave it up to academic like yourself to analyze where this mindset thing could come from lah. Okay, I like to take a more practical approach. This is a problem that we have. What can we do to really change things? So like now, I'll be very frank with you. If I look at the COVID-19 right this pandemic, the positive thing that came out of this pandemic is that people begin to realize some of the important work that is being done by these lower wage workers. Even for me, if you check my last speech in Parliament, I stopped calling them low wage workers. I prefer to call them essential service workers. And we must be prepared to pay for service. So this is another mindset change that we need. You need to be prepared. You need to be prepared to pay more in order to enjoy service. I mean, when I visited other countries, for example, I remember I was in Sweden. The cost of service to eat out is expensive. All right, and then many of them then prefer to eat at home because why? They pay for service, and we cannot have the mindset that when it comes to paying for essential service, we are very reluctant. But we don't mind paying for other things which is more tangible. Yep.
Right. So I think I also want to be practical, right? Because if we don't understand where the mindset comes from, then it's very difficult to think about changing it as well. But anyway, I think we can leave it at it. So how exactly do we go about changing the mindset, do you think? What are the practical ways we can?
I think when it comes to about changing mindset, it is never easy. We can start by creating awareness. I think that is important. And how do you create awareness? It's really to show the impact of one's action that might have on others. And I think that is for a start. And we can also look in terms of educating our children when they are still young. So I give you one example, bus drivers. In the past, we call them bus drivers, but now seldom do you see young children addressing the worker handling the vehicle as bus. They are called bus captains because we acknowledge that they hold a huge responsibility in terms of transporting passenger from point A to point B. It is a process which might take time, but you need to start somewhere.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you for that. So other than so let's talk specifically about income inequality. Do you think meritocracy, the logical outcome of meritocracy, is income inequality?
I have to disagree because I think what is the alternative to meritocracy? Okay, what is the alternative?
The alternative is something you mentioned before, right? Class-based affirmative action.
Not necessarily is class-based affirmative action. If we do not base some of our policies based on meritocracy, then if you go by your connection with people, your influence, I think the unintended consequences might be worse. Meritocracy is not perfect. But I think for a start, it will allow people to level up the social ladder. It's just that we just need to mitigate and make sure that our meritocracy is not just based on one particular set of credentials. We might be, in the past, I think our merit was too skewed towards educational qualification. If you are educated, the chances of you making progressing will be higher compared to you if you do not have those educational qualification. And I think we need to move towards what I think this term was coined by then Education Minister Mr. Shanmugaratnam, authentic meritocracy, where we acknowledge the skills, the talent that people have, and allow these people to also progress up the social ladder. And I think under Mr. Taman Shanmugaratnam, where we then start introducing the direct school admission, where we allow schools to admit students based on certain skills and talent. It's not perfect, all right, but I think there will be unintended consequences, but we just have to mitigate what are some of these unintended consequences.
Right. Right. So you mentioned these few things, right? And I think actually don't they make a case against pure meritocracy, right? Because the direct schools admission, very well intentioned, right? But I would think parents with more resources can train their children from a very young age to be very good at something, and co-curricular activity or an extracurricular activity, as opposed to parents with fewer resources, right? And also you said about connection. Isn't that what meritocracy after 2 or 3 generations do? Isn't that what it does? Because you come from a family with more resources, you are able to send for tuition, and also if your parents are university educated, then they know more university educated people, more successful people, and then that's what it does, right? So there is an inherent flaw in merit. I guess why the reluctance to admit that meritocracy is flawed, just as affirmative action is flawed, but meritocracy is super flawed also.
I wouldn't say that meritocracy is flawed. It is not perfect. I think it is quite natural for parents with more resources to actually give the best to their children. But I think then as a society, as a government, as a nation, there are certain baseline that we need to make sure that every child can have access to. So I give you as an example, when we look at pre-primary education, kindergarten. In the past, it wasn't in the agenda. Our focus was really to make sure that the children enter primary school. But now we realize the importance of preschool education. So government pumps some money to make sure that every child can have access to preschool education. But of course, some parents that are more well off, they might not necessarily opt for the mass like PCF people. They might opt for some of the better ones. But I think this is something natural. But we just have to make sure that at the end of the day, we are helping the lower income group, the vulnerable. It is impossible for you to have in a society where there is a perfect or equal opportunities.
Equal outcomes, right? We can equalize opportunities as much as possible, right?
Yes.
But equal outcomes probably. I'm not even sure whether it's desirable. But okay, so I mean, and just a note on that, I think my son went to PCF for a while, and it's pretty decent. I think it's pretty good, the quality. So it's not as if so I think that part I think has been done pretty well. But you used to be a champion of class-based affirmative action, right? What happened? Have you sort of changed your views on that?
I'm not sure whether I champion for class-based affirmative action. I think it was a term which somebody used, okay? But my affirmative action will be more in the form of making sure that certain group of workers are not unfairly treated. Yeah. Okay. So it was more in the context of a progressive wage model. Okay, you have this group of workers. If necessary, if we need to enact legislation to protect them, then we must do it. Yeah.
Okay. So, Mr. Zainal, Brother Zainal, sorry. So, do you think the GRC is an example of affirmative action?
GRC is an affirmative action. I think when it started, it was intended to make sure minority representation is assured in Parliament. Yep.
So,
But this is not on class inequality, you know.
no, it's not. It's not. But my point is, if we acknowledge that there are limits to meritocracy in the political sphere, why can't we admit that and have some form? I'm not talking. I think race-based affirmative action in the economic sphere is doomed to fail. I think that is something we must reject. But class-based affirmative action is extremely feasible and in fact desirable, right? Don't you think so?
Okay, again, like I said, when it comes to class-based affirmative action, not within my, not something which I really delve into, but because my focus is really on helping lower wage workers earn better wages, better welfare, better life. That has been my focus of my 2 years in Parliament.
Okay. 2 years in Parliament.
Sorry, 2 terms.
2 terms. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so you've already given a few concrete solutions, right? So one is childcare, and you nationalize that, or not nationalize that, but make sure the basic level,
accessible,
the entry level, is
accessible.
Pretty good. Is very good, of very good quality, right? Okay, so that's one. And then PWM, you are a champion of it. And other than that, you also talk about changing mindsets. Other than that, is there any other suggestion you have to tackle income inequality? Yeah.
If we look at income equality, there is no silver bullet that able to really, you cannot eradicate income inequality, all right? Because at the end of the day, if you want to have zero income inequality, then each one of us get the same salary, then Gini coefficient will be 0, all right? But I think what we need to do is to institute a policy more at the critical areas to make sure that the lower wage families, they can have access to some of these basic needs. For example, if you look at our housing policy, we institute housing policy to make sure that at the end of the day, everybody has a chance to own a home. If you look at, I still remember statistically speaking, 80% of those in the bottom 20% of the income, household income bracket, they do own their own homes. So again, housing policies, additional housing grant, all these intended as a form of income redistribution. Then we must also look in terms of our policies of ensuring retirement adequacy, all right? Topping up CPF to make sure, again, there are certain segments in our group that will have those support. Yeah, if you look in terms of healthcare needs, what are some of the things that we can actually support this group of people? So it is not just about minimum wage that we think will address income equality. It requires really a broad spectrum of policies.
Oh, absolutely. So on you mentioned healthcare. I think the MediSave requirements, for instance, we've had this discussion. I think it's so stringent, unnecessarily so.
Yeah. I think again, we need to understand the purpose of MediSave. There has been some adjustment that is made to MediSave, where I think the government do allow for certain type of treatment to be payable using your MediSave. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that should anyone is hospitalized and the cost of the medical treatment is so high, it doesn't cause you to be in dire financial straits. there is still you still have some MediSave saving to help you from falling into dire financial straits.
But isn't that statement itself, don't you see, even that statement itself is problematic, right? Why should a citizen of Singapore or anybody who goes to the hospital consider that as a possibility even, right?
Oh, so that is the reason.
You could be so poor without medicine.
So that is the reason, again, like I said, then we introduce other layers of support. If let's say you don't have any MediSave, then that is where Medifund kicks in. Then even the most recent that we introduced was a national healthcare insurance policy, which is our MediShield Life.
Right.
Yeah, because if you look in terms of the medical support that Singaporeans enjoy, we are still relatively better off in some countries. I remember when I was in Switzerland, I wasn't feeling very well. I actually went to the clinic. I remember the assistant, the first question she asked me, "Do you have health insurance?" All right. Then when I told her I didn't have health insurance, then she actually referred me to a clinic, which I thought maybe it would be cheaper, but eventually it cost me £160 for diarrhea.
Oh wow!
Treatment for diarrhea. Is it 100 not
euros.
pounds? Sorry, 160 the Swedish currency lah. I'm not sure what is that lah.
This is in Sweden or Switzerland?
Switzerland.
Okay.
Sorry, in Switzerland. What is it?
Okay.
In Kronos, is it? I cannot remember, but it was expensive lah. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. All right. Okay. So thank you so much. So I think we have covered quite a fair bit of ground. I think. Thank you, and I've always appreciated your work in Parliament, and also you are only the third PAP person to come on my show. I hope more will come. I don't know why.
I'm just doing you as a friend. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, Prof Yaacob was the first. I mean, he mentioned Swiss francs as well. That's the currency. Francs. Yeah. So he was the first. But thank you. Louis Ng was the other one. So let's take it up a notch, right? So
okay.
Sarah Margaret, right? So where do you stand? Because you commented on the incident in Today, and your comment was also picked up in Parliament by somebody we both know, Joshua, NMP.
Okay.
Joshua. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that
I do not see it as where do I stand, but I have been a grassroots advisor, and I know PA, they are quite true to their mission in terms of promoting racial harmony, in terms of promoting cohesion in the community, and as we know, a lot of our grassroots activities, it is organized by volunteers, support by PA staff. Yes, a mistake was made, but like I said, I wouldn't coin it as an effort to be insensitive to the community lah. I shared you like one example. Even when I was a grassroots advisor, there was one incident where I think my grassroots leaders they wanted to organize an event, and that event falls during our Ramadan. All right. Okay. And they didn't expect any Muslims would be attending that event. So they advertised a particular dish which would appeal to the Chinese population. But unfortunately, when they advertised it, it kind of offended the Muslim community. So they learned from it. I think at the end of the day, when an incident happened, let's learn from this incident and we move forward. Because we do not want to dampen the spirit of these grassroots leaders. I didn't think there was any ill intention. It was a wrong judgment call to have the two the two standees. It was inappropriate. I agree, it was inappropriate. It doesn't actually reflect but we learn from the incident and we move on.
Okay,
Yep.
so I agree there is no intention to be insensitive, but the outcome was insensitive, right?
What is the outcome?
The outcome of, I mean, they didn't intend to be insensitive. They wanted to show whatever they wanted to show, but what they did was insensitive, right? Without being mean intention or ill intention.
Yeah, of course. You can say.
Right.
I
Okay,
wouldn't
so
say what they did was the outcome was insensitive. The outcome is something that they didn't expect. I mean, for us, we see it as insensitive, but to the committee, to whoever made that decision, he might not realize that it was not
but
appropriate.
now they realize already, right? Or
Of
they
course,
should
lah.
have
Yes,
realized.
yeah. Then learn from it, lah. Yeah.
Then why cancel the meeting if
Oh,
that's what?
I'm not privy why the meeting was cancelled. So I really don't.
Right, okay. What do you think as a private citizen? What do you think? The People's Association, which is meant, you said they are true to their values. If their values is about bringing people together, why go after a private citizen in the way they did?
Okay. How the case was managed, I cannot comment.
Why cannot you comment?
No, I cannot comment. Really, I'm not privy to the decision why
but
they.
as a private citizen, you can make a decision, or you can opine because you opine on the case. You opine on the case, and you said that incident basically from the way that the Today article quoted you was that you disagree with Sarah, right? So why the hesitancy to disagree with the PA if you think that the PA did something wrong?
The PA did something wrong. You mean not meeting up?
In cancelling the meeting. Yes, in cancelling.
In cancelling the meeting. I mean, at the end of the day, they must have a reason for doing so. But if I had been the grassroots advisor, I would have met up with her.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So I hope Melvin Yong is listening. So I understand because you have links to the party. I mean, you're a party member, and so it's a bit. I'm putting you in a difficult spot, right? So
no lah, you're not putting me in a difficult spot.
Right. Okay. So, but you wouldn't, right? You wouldn't have cancelled the meeting if you were the PA person in charge.
I would have met up to address her grievance. Yep.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So Koki is saying you are not a private citizen. Well, yeah, it's true. You are a party member and all, but I'm just saying.
So what is a private citizen?
Okay. Fine. Yeah. You're right. So I don't wanna go down that.
I'm a Singaporean.
So I guess, Mr. Zainal, why that incident, right? Sort of left a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth, right? Especially coming off the back of 2020, where soul searching and so on, right? So why do that approach? Why conduct that approach to a citizen who was clearly sincere? Even if you disagree with her methods, right? Why not settle it over Teh Tarik, over Instagram Live, or in a private closed session? Why not? Why cancel and issue such a strong statement, right? And then when I saw the Today article where leaders like yourself were quoted, right? None of them actually gave this perspective, right? Oh, PA shouldn't have done that. When it's easy to go after Sarah, right? She is a private citizen.
Well, Sarah is a private citizen. Yeah.
By the way, Prof Yaakob says he's a private citizen. So everybody's a private citizen. So I guess why is it when it's an individual, it's so easy to disagree with that person, but when it's a government institution, right? We will give so many caveats, and then so many excuses, and that generosity is not extended to citizens who are deemed to disagree with the government sometimes.
So, like I said, at the end of the day, different people have different take on the issue lah. But I am of the position, let not such issue cause divisiveness in the community lah. But like I always stick to the stand that let's learn from it and then we move on. I mean hindsight is always 2020. All right, it's
Okay.
always perfect. And when a decision is made not to meet up with Sarah Baghrib, right? Miss Sarah Baghrib, maybe PA didn't anticipate that kind of reaction. But again, on hindsight, maybe if they were to be in a similar situation, they might make a different decision.
Well, they can reverse that decision now.
Yeah, I do
It's
not
not
know.
hindsight. They can do it. They can do it now. So it's not hindsight anymore, right? They already know the. Okay, so you
Yeah.
said we shouldn't be divisive, right? So, which I completely agree. As in, we must always try towards.
Dr.
move
Walid,
towards
we are
this thing.
supposed to talk about income inequality.
Yeah. Sorry, I already gave a caveat. I don't want to divert, but I mean, I had to do something. Just kind of. Do you think what Shamsul Kama and Amin did was that divisive, or are you not going to comment on that?
Samsul, I'm
You don't know. Oh, you didn't.
okay. I know what you are referring. What you are referring to, lah. I think at the end of the day, I cannot stop what they want to do. But at the end of the day,
I understand that. I understand.
you just
I
bear.
understand that.
Yeah, you just bear
what I'm
whatever
just
is the
saying is-
consequences. Yeah.
I'm just saying that it's very easy to say that, oh, this is divisive, that is divisive.
Yeah.
Right? But if people who went after Sarah also went after Shamsul, right? I think it would mean so much. At least I would say, okay, you are consistent because what you really do not want is divisiveness, right? So,
Yeah.
but it's so easy. I mean, to go after Sarah, who's, as I said, who doesn't have the same level of power as the other people, right? So that's what I thought the way the whole thing was handled. It wasn't just PA, right? It was prominent people like Shamsul and Amrin who really should have known better, right?
Hard to comment on that, lah.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. Let's get back to income inequality. Sorry. So, what is the right balance between foreign talent and local talent, right? So on one hand, this whole Sika debate has taken on a very nasty turn as well, and for Indians like me, we are very used to all sorts of racism disguised as other things. At the same time, right, there are some valid concerns by Singaporeans, on the part of Singaporeans, to foreign talent, for instance, right? I may not necessarily share those concerns, but I know many Singaporeans probably agree with the sentiment that PSP is putting forth, right? I do not, but I think many people, that resonates with many people, right? So how do we find the balance between foreign talent and that? Because that is very related to income inequality.
I think it's not easy to find the right balance, because I think the balance differ from different groups, lah. So I give you as an example, right? If you look at some employers, they will always say that it is very difficult to get Singaporeans to do certain jobs. So I give you an example. I'm quite involved in the cleaning industry, landscape industry. There's always a call for us to allow them to hire more foreign workers. But at the same time, we also need to understand that we also need to make sure that that these jobs are still available to Singaporeans if they are willing to do the work, all right? But then if you look at and then what do we do to protect our to Singaporeans' interests? We introduce what we call the dependency ratio. You're only entitled to a certain level of foreigners if you hire a certain percentage of Singaporeans. Then if you go up to the SPAS, it is the same thing. SPAS would actually be equivalent to the diploma holders. We have certain qualifying salary for SPAS, and there is also a certain quota, again, to make sure that at the end of the day, there is a level playing field. And over time, what we do is that we try to make some adjustment. The one that currently we do not have a quota is actually the employment pass, all right? because again, you need to strike a balance. You want to make sure that when companies invest in Singapore, they are also able to attract the kind of talent that they need. So if we look at Google, right? Google, they need certain type of talent, and some of their employees are actually on employment pass. But what we can do is to mitigate any downside. I know MOM, they are very active in terms of ensuring fair hiring practices. If let's say there are complaints, there are allegations that the firms are not offering fair hiring practices, MOM will come in and investigate. We try to institute, for example, before you can hire anyone on employment pass, you need to put up an advertisement to hire locals. If let's say there are complaints by locals that MOM didn't give me fair consideration, and if MOM feels that it is true that the company is really not enforcing fair hiring practices, then administrative penalties will be given. Some of these companies, they will be barred from applying their work pass privileges will actually be curtailed. So again,
Right.
I know it is a very sensitive topic, but really finding that fine balance is not easy. There's no formula. So it's really, we have to make adjustment through trial and error, and make sure that at the end of the day, Singaporeans are being looked after as well.
Okay. No, I completely agree. I think this is one of the most difficult balances to strike. I mean, being in government is all about striking balances, right? So thank you for that. By the way, I just wanted to clarify to the listeners, right? I did ask Mr. Zainal beforehand whether I can ask him on Sarah, and he was gracious enough to tell me I can ask anything and he'll answer.
Yeah.
So if he had said no, I wouldn't have asked. Okay, so for future PAP members who want to come on, please don't worry, I will not ask questions you don't want to ask. Okay, so Mr. Zainal, any final thoughts? Anything you wanted to say before we end?
I think at the end of the day, many people are actually doing whatever they can when it comes to lower wage workers to make sure that they can have a better life. But at the end of the day, it is always, when it comes to income inequality, to help these lower wage workers earn better wages, is a race without a finishing line. It is an ongoing process. We tweak, we make some adjustment, we learn from our mistakes, but I do not doubt that really on the part of the government and on the part of the stakeholders that we do work with, there is a genuine attempt to make sure that those people below the 20th percentile have a better shot at earning better wages. But it cannot be just the effort of the government alone, the effort of the employer. It must be as a whole society approach.
Right, okay. Thank you so much. So Koki said politicians shouldn't get to pick and choose which citizens' questions they answer. Well, I would agree if I was Straits Times journalist, right? I would agree completely. If I were journalist, I shouldn't. But you know, I'm asking people who come on here for free.
But I think, I didn't pick any question.
You didn't. So Mr. Zainal didn't. I think many of them didn't. Some of them did, but many of them didn't. So thank you for that, Mr. Zainal. So Mr. Zainal, I always end off with this question. So who is the MP you least like? Who is the who is the opposition MP you like the most?
Who is the opposition MP that I like most?
Opposition figure doesn't have to be MP. Who is the one that you like?
Who is the one that I like? A bit difficult because when I was in Parliament, I do see every of the opposition member, they play their role as an opposition member. because I know some of them. I mean, I'm quite close to, I know Faisal, I know Sylvia, and then I know also some of them lah. All right. To say whether I have any favorite opposition, I wouldn't say. But again, and I do respect that they do play their role as an opposition in Parliament. But the one that I'm closest to will be Faisal Manap lah.
Right, and he speaks really highly of you. In my personal conversations, and also I think I have to commend you. I think you are a rare breed in politics. Right? I said this to Prof Yaakob as well, where you do not make personal attacks. Or sometimes in politics you have to make personal attacks anyway. I mean, it's part for the cause, but you are one of those who really stay away from that. So thank you.
But again, in my time as a politician, there were certain things.
You still are a politician. Judging by this interview, you are still.
If I had the benefit of hindsight, there are certain things I wouldn't do. Yeah.
Really? Like
course.
What? We are ending, then you say this.
I mean,
like
the one that I was heavily attacked because of my comment that I said not within my pay grade. Because there was there was a conversation which I had with, I think, Professor Tomiko, on the issue of.
So he asked you
I think lower.
Right?
I think because people don't understand the context, because Professor Tomiko was asking, Zainal, if you can expand progressive wage model to more sectors, then I think I made the remark, not within my pay grade. It's really not my call to expand. It was in that context. But unfortunately, it was misinterpreted. Because if you read my follow-up to my response, at the end of the day, of course, I'm supportive of expanding progressive wage model to more sectors. Of course, I'm supportive of higher wages for the workers. But that part was missed out. But again, I think the comment was inappropriate. Yeah, but like I said,
was it inappropriate? Why was it inappropriate? I mean, because you were answering it in a whimsical manner, but your point was correct, right?
Yeah, but again, it could have been responded in a better way lah. Instead of saying not within my pay grade, I could have just told Professor, it is not my call to make that decision. It's not within my decision. Yeah.
Okay, I think it's fine. Sometimes we introduce a bit of humor. What's wrong with that? I mean, you were not going after anybody. So So I think I just wanted to read out a few comments. Just now somebody said that you were a fierce discipline master. Basically, you always made him or her sweat and.
Not true lah.
My wife said she was scared of you. So and Ocean said you were the best superintendent in MOE. So I think you did leave your mark. I mean, from my own conversations, even the opposition also speaks.
I think at the end of the day, respect begets respect lah. I mean, if you respect your student, if you respect your colleagues, if you respect the opposition, respect begets respect lah.
Right. And I definitely have a lot of respect for you for your professional work in Parliament and also for how you've always been to me in spite of our disagreements occasionally. We must agree to disagree. Yes, you've always been very, very nice to me and I really appreciate that. So thank you so much, Mr. Zainal.
Right.
We went slightly over 1 hour. Sorry about that, but thank you so
no
much.
Worries. Okay, most welcome. All right. Okay, good night.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum.
Okay, waalaikumsalam.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, everyone. Bye-bye.